Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. This week is going to be one of the most interesting matchups of the year for the Cleveland Browns because the Detroit Lions are probably the most interesting matchup that the Cleveland Browns have had all season. And what I mean by that is the strength of the Cleveland Browns is adjacent to the strength of the Detroit Lions. The big muscle of that Detroit Lions football team is that offensive line. That is the engine that powers everything that they do in Detroit, is that offensive line. When they're clicking on all cylinders, when they're moving bodies, you saw it last week, they are a force to be reckoned with. The Cleveland Browns, on the other hand, the strength, the heart and soul of the entire team is the defensive line. When the Browns' defensive line is firing on all cylinders, doing what they need to do, we can drag a trash can at quarterback to a victory versus a Super Bowl contender in the Green Bay Packers. Also, this is a road game for the Cleveland Browns, right? This is a team that, we're not 100% sure how well they're going to perform defensively on the road. I know some people in 2023 made a whole big deal about how the Browns played on the road. I don't really think that's what the narrative should have been about that defense. I think a lot of the road game stuff had to do with coincidences and interceptions that were happening more frequently on the road because of quarterbacks who were playing there, but I digress. The Browns defense getting their biggest test this week, and the Detroit Lions know this, right? They said, I don't know who specifically had the quote, but the quote coming out of Detroit is that the Lions' number one run game is nothing that the Cleveland Browns have seen. They've never seen a run game quite like the Lions. They got Sonic and Knuckles. That's what they're calling Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They also have a elite offensive line. Now, when it comes to running back talent, the Browns have played some pretty high-level running back talent. Talking about Derrick Henry, talking about, Josh Jacobs last week, right? But to be fair, when it comes to offensive lines, we don't know what the Ravens' offensive line looks like it's going to be, but it hasn't been great to start the season. And we don't know what Green Bay's offensive line is going to be, but the Green Bay offensive line was heavily injured by the end of the Browns game last week. So the Browns have not played an offensive line quite like Detroit's. And I think that's fair to point out. I think it's fair of Detroit to point it out. Even if you want to go run game, you can say, hey, look, the Browns stopped Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in week 2. And that is something that the Browns definitely get to put a feather in their hat for. Is it different than stopping the Lions? Is it more impressive than stopping the Lions? I don't know. It's different, though, right? Like stopping Lamar and Derrick Henry and this rushing attack that you see twice a year for the last 5 years. Well, not with Derrick Henry, but Lamar Jackson. The run game's been pretty similar. Is a lot different than stopping what the Detroit Lions do. I don't know if it's more difficult, but it is different. Penei Sewell, we saw what he could do, pulling, all that stuff. He basically neutralized Roquan Smith in that game versus the Baltimore Ravens. So, yeah, the Browns haven't seen a challenge like that. And that's why I think it is so obvious to me where this game's going to come down to. It's going to come down to that battle on the defensive line versus the offensive line when Detroit has the ball. Can the Browns win that battle up front? If the Browns can win that battle up front, they're going to have room for error in this game, right? Because they're going to be able to kind of dictate the pace of it if they win that battle. If Detroit wins that battle up front, then the Browns all of a sudden get very little room for error, right? or if it goes half and half, right? The more the Browns defense dominates, the more margin of error the offense gets. And the offense has been poor to start the season. So you're going to want more margin of error for that offense as it is right now. Now, if we get an outlier game from this offense and all of a sudden it starts to come alive and we're able to go blow for blow with Detroit, then anything can happen. But if this offense performs like we're used to it, unfortunately, then to win this game, you're going to need the defense to create a large margin of error, and they're going to have to win that battle on the defensive line consistently. Another reason why winning the battle on the defensive line consistently is Jared Goff. Because while they can say, and I will have nothing to say to them, that their run game is the best run game, the biggest test that the Browns are going to have to battle in this portion of the season. I'm not going to debate that. I think they're right on that. The one thing I will debate is if they tell me that Jared Goff's the best quarterback the Browns have played so far. This is no disrespect to Jared Goff, but if you go down the list of quarterbacks NFL teams would take before Jared Goff, you're going to find a list that has a lot of the quarterbacks the Browns have played already. Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I'm pretty sure Detroit would rather have those guys than Jared Goff. It's no disrespect to Jared. Jared's a good quarterback. And to Jared's credit, he is the most veteran, most experienced quarterback that the Browns have played so far. So maybe he's not going to be able to beat the Browns with athleticism or pure power when it comes to throwing the football. But maybe he's able to better outsmart the Browns. Now, again, it's not like Lamar Jackson is not a veteran quarterback, right? It's not like Joe Burrow is not a veteran quarterback. And most importantly, you know, the one thing I have to kind of negate that whole veteran quarterback idea with Jared Goff is Lamar Jackson not that much younger than Jared Goff, right? I think Lamar's 2 years younger or 2 years less experience than Jared Goff. Jared Goff was the 2016 draft. Lamar Jackson was 2018, so 2 years separate them. Same thing with Joe Burrow's a lot younger, right? But Lamar Jackson has played against this Browns defense way more than Jared Goff has, right? So if experience was going to kill us, Lamar would have been able to kill us in those first 3 quarters before the Browns offense start turning the ball over like crazy. And the same would have been true with Joe Burrow, who's experienced this defense a lot more. So I don't know how much experience is going to matter, but that's something there for Jared Goff. The one issue for Jared Goff in this game is that he's not really good when he's pressured. Now, again, not a lot of quarterbacks are great when they're pressured, right? That's the whole point of getting pressure on the quarterback. It makes it hard to play quarterback. But Jared has not been used to getting pressured, right? He's the 31st least pressured quarterback in the NFL. Only 32% of his dropbacks have had pressure on them. But when it comes to being pressured in performance, there's a number of metrics you can go by. We'll use a Pro Football Focus grade here to kind of demonstrate this because it's the most easy way to demonstrate the point. He has Jared Goff has the 28th lowest passing grade when pressured this season. If we go back to last season, we could pull this information up and it tells us that Jared Goff would be 26. So this is pretty consistent throughout Jared Goff's career. If you keep him clean, he's going to do things. If you pressure him, you can make him look significantly worse than he actually is. So if the Browns are able to win that battle, they're going to get pressure on Jared. Jared's not going to be able to execute the offense at a high level. Amon-Ra St. Brown becomes less of a problem for you because the quarterback's not executing. All that stuff happens. The Browns get a large margin of error, right, offensively, because we know this offense stinks. They're going to need a large margin of error to win this game, and that gives them room to win the game. If the Detroit Lions aren't able to protect Jared Goff, give him his 3-second time to throw, by the way. That's what he's used to, about 3 seconds of time to throw. And keep in mind, I think the Browns get pressure on average 2.6 seconds. So if they're able to slow down the Browns defense, especially this defensive line, give Jared Goff time, Jared Goff's going to cook. Jared Goff's going to find Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to cook, Greg Newsome in the slot, every once in a while, or whoever we have in the slot every once in a while, because he's a really good player. And then that's going to start loosening up the defense, and then they're going to be able to run the ball. It's all going to come down to that defensive line. Obviously, you want to be able to rely on your offense, but this offense is just not there yet. They're going to get better as the year goes on, but right now, just not there yet, just not in a good position. So, again, win games like this, it's going to come down to the defensive line. They're going to have to put Jared Goff in a bad situation. Now that we've gotten some of the game plan stuff and some of the talk between the two teams covered, I want to talk about the injury report. But before I do that, I want to thank my sponsor for today, Sleeper. Hey, have you ever heard of the Sleeper app? Well, here's a fun secret. It's not just for fantasy leagues. It's great for fantasy leagues. I personally have used it for years with my college friends to play fantasy football and to do pick'em leagues, all sorts of fun stuff like that. But the Sleeper app also gives you news. It gives you scores. You can also try to turn your football knowledge into real money. Just download the Sleeper app and pick more or less on your favorite players. With more stats than any other daily fantasy app, just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from the predicted stats, and you could win up to 100 times your money if your picks win. Use promo code WORSTTAKE, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Again, promo code WORSTTAKE, you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Links are in the description. All right, this is the injury report. Joe Bitonio back full at practice. That was expected. He was not missing any time on Wednesday for injury-related stuff. Another guy fully back, Myles Garrett. Again, not injury-related, just rest. You kind of expected that. David Njoku, limited in practice yesterday, but now full in practice today. We got a couple of guys getting upgraded from DNP to practicing. So Denzel Ward did not practice, was limited today. Again, I think he'll play. Cedric Tillman, 2 limited practices, but finished the game last week, so I think he'll play. David Njoku, we just talked about him going from limited to full. He's fine. Shelby Harris did not play, limited. And then Mike Hall went from a DNP to limited. With Mike Hall, he has not played since last year. I don't know what to do with Mike Hall, right? Like, if he doesn't get a full practice in, I'm not going to anticipate that he plays at this point. If he misses this game, it would have been 4 weeks. And yeah, I just wonder why he wasn't put on PUP. It doesn't feel like that one roster spot is breaking the Cleveland Browns right now, but it's just a question of like, what happened? Did he get a setback? It feels like a setback, don't it? Like he just missed 3 practices in a row for no reason other than this is the plan, and then now he's back limited. It's just strange what's going on there. Still limited at practice. I was hoping he'd be full at practice today. I'm hearing he might play this week. Like they're more optimistic about him playing this week, but I don't know. It's still just strange to me how this has all been handled. Myles Garrett, full practice. Grant Delpit, back, limited. He'll play. He finished the game. Jack Conklin's another one where I think they'll try to give him a go this week because they almost have to. But a real question of like, is this a guy they want to give a full practice to before they play him, or are they fine with him just doing limited practices? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But if they can get Jack Conklin back, obviously that would be huge. If they can get Mike Hall back this week, that'd be a big deal because, again, this is a week where you're going to want every single weapon on that defensive line available to you to try to win this game, because that's where the battle's going to be. Now, if we look at the Detroit side of this, there are some interesting things there as well. So Zach Cunningham went from not on the injury report to limited today. That's interesting. D Barnes, limited. Taylor Decker, shoulder injury, did not practice 2 in a row. That's not a great sign, right? Muhammad came back limited. That's a good sign for him. And then Thomas and Vaki both not practicing. Probably not great signs for their availability either. If Decker's not in this game this week, I mean, that's a big deal. That's a massive deal for the Detroit Lions. That is a player that they absolutely need to play this week when the challenge is Myles Garrett, right? And one of the best defensive lines in all of football. You don't want to run a backup tackle that week, especially if you're trying to limit or trying to put yourself in a position where you can get your good-on-good matchup with your right tackle in Myles Garrett. You know, if there's an obvious hole on the opposite side of Penei Sewell, then Myles ain't never going to see Penei in that game. So that's going to be interesting to look at how they choose to block him. Are they going to be confident in that offensive line and just kind of let Myles get one-on-ones? Or are they going to do what, the Packers did and kind of like bet on the Browns' other guys to beat them? It's going to be interesting to see. But that's the injury report, the update so far for this week's game versus the Detroit Lions. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.